So we are continuing this sermon series called Generosity, and the reason why I'm kind of weird about following after that, saying we're kind of just continuing, is because I have to be honest about the season that we're in. It's Thanksgiving, right? It's Thanksgiving. Like, if you notice, a lot of the younger families aren't around right now. It's because they're going scuttling off to cold places, cold reaches in the world, to visit grandparents and things like that. We have a few people that are in town, visiting. They came from the cold reaches, like came down to the parental units, right? And so, there's a few Sundays a year that I'm like, we don't have everyone here, so I kind of don't make it part of the normal sermon series. And this is one of them. Next Sunday's kind of the same way. That's why we do Christ the King Sunday after Christmas. We do this with summers too. But that's kind of what this is. But we saved this one. So we're talking about the 8th commandment. Now, if you remember last week, the sermon was not the best, but that's okay. We all get some bad ones, right? Sure. And so last week we talked about the 9th and the 10th commandments, and we're going back and talking about the 8th. That's because you guys are going to be sitting around tables, and Uncle Dale is going to be there, right? And so it's like, all right, so how do we speak to Uncle Dale and go through all of this? That's what we're talking about today. So to begin with, what is the 8th commandment? Come on, Lutherans. Whoa, man, all right. First service, everyone offered an answer. Not many were correct, but everyone offered. Second service, you guys are like it's not right. That's not it. The 8th commandment is you shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. All right, good Lutherans, what does this mean? You guys aren't even going the easy route, right? Like, the first thing you got to say whenever you hear this, we should fear and love God. That's what Coley said in the first service. She goes, we should fear and love God, and then she stopped. Because that's how all the commandments begin with the what does this mean. So we should fear loving God so that we do not tell lies about our neighbor, betray him, slander him, or hurt his reputation, but defend him, speak well of him, and explain everything in the kindest way. Like that's what we do, right? Like, that's over there. So don't slander. Don't do sweet gossip. Don't slander. Don't hurt the reputation, right? Like, that's now I know I'm a public figure, not a big public figure, but listen, I'm 2 steps higher than everyone else. Like that's Like that's I'm a public figure, like over there. And there's been some times where on social media or something, like, someone's tried to hurt my reputation, tried to go up to the hires. We've talked about that before. That's what this is kind of about. Like, don't try to diminish people, but actually speak well of them. Oh, that's where the title came from. Speak well of them. Or Luther puts it this way in the Large Catechism, which I think is my favorite work of Luther, is the Large Catechism. For it is a common evil plague that everyone prefers hearing evil to hearing good of his neighbor. It's like the news, right? If it bleeds, it leads. What did Sheila do? Oh my goodness, I can't believe she just did that. Her husband Dale, they've got that boat in their yard for three years, and they haven't done a thing with it, right? Like, we love to hear the evil, and although we ourselves are so bad that we could never abide or suffer that anyone should say anything bad about me, right? Like, I couldn't dare. It's like, I declare they said an evil thing about me. But everyone would much rather that all the world speak of me in terms of gold, yet we cannot bear that the best is spoken of others. I love Luther. I love Luther there, because that's kind of the heart of this. And this reminds me of kind of stories from my own past. I have a friend, really good friend, and he's not like a pastor, doesn't even work in churches. And before I met him, he was actually part of like a church plant, and that church plant was like growing like crazy. This was going to be like a mega church type of thing. And they moved into a new facility, and this guy had a history of knowing how to set up phone systems and knowing how to set up, the internet and all that stuff. And he was running all these wires and setting up all the boxes and all those things going through. Well, while everything was going in, someone else moved something and everything stopped working, and it was frustrating, and there was a lot of anxiety. And finally, the lead pastor came up in his skinny jeans and just laid into my friend. Like just laid into him and just like, why is this not working? This is terrible. And he wanted it to be a certain level of perfection and just laid into him. Now, I don't remember all those details, but I do know that friend, who I'm still friends with today, talks about that story every now and then. That's something that has really hit him, that has hit him right there. And I think we can understand we've all been affected by places like that. Maybe not in church, but in other places in life where someone wanted to serve perfection so bad, they ended up railroading us and hurting us in some way, right? Like that is, we all kind of have stories like that. And our gospel lesson is kind of like that too. Now, so we read it just a little bit ago, and this is a very common story that you hear. And often how it's presented is this woman gave so much to Jesus, and the way you usually hear it preached, and I've preached variations of this, is like she gave so much, an entire year's worth of wages to Jesus, right? In this beautiful act, you should give to the church as well. Like you should make this happen. Is that what's happening here? I looked at it through a different lens. It might bother you, some of you. We'll see. But I think it's cool. So this story about this woman is riddled with anxiety. There's anxiety all around it. And the characters in the story, the disciples, Jesus, the woman, the chief priests, and the elders, they're all filled with anxiety. One of the problems that I think we have with reading the Bible a lot of times is that we want to read it like an encyclopedia. We're like, this is what Jesus did on November 19th at 10:49 a.m. This is what year 3, like this is what Jesus did. But that's not how the Bible's written. The Bible's written more like how we read fiction or good stories, right? How we read stuff. And when it's bringing anxiety onto us as the reader, it's meant for us to be feeling that anxiety, that pain, that hurt. When you read a good book and you can just feel like the pain coming off the page on it, it does that. So this story right here is found in Mark chapter 14. And do you know what comes right before Mark chapter 14? 13. Good job. Some of you are listening. That's good. 13 comes right before 14. You listen, you guys are smart. Don't ever don't like that. So Mark 13 is before 14. And in that is a chapter that's just riddled with anxiety. That's the chapter where Jesus talks about how the temple's going to be destroyed. He talks about how some people are going to be caught up and others are going to be left behind. He even says this is chapter 13, verse 8, that nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places and famines. And you know what? That's just going to be the beginning. Right? Like it's bringing us into this like apocalyptic literature, and it's bringing us into the anxiety of the story. It's very rare that I've read this like in Bible study where someone goes, "Ooh, I don't know if I like this." And they can feel the anxiety in it as it's building in here. And you know what happens right after this? It's the Last Supper, and Jesus goes to the cross, is arrested and goes to the cross. Like all this anxiety is building to make it so we can feel it, right? And we can feel it. Talking about wars and rumors of wars, man, it's almost been 2 years that we've been dealing with the Ukraine mess, right? Like not to mention now we've got Israel to worry about. And we're worried that those two together are going to drag us into an even bigger conflict. And we're just it's amazing. It's one of these situations where it's like, I don't know where to stand. I don't know where to be. And you just have to say, Lord, have mercy. And it feels like it's just the beginning, right? It drags us into the midst of the anxiety where we can cut it with a knife. We can see it, feel it, understand it, right? And that's what happens with anxiety, is that when we feel anxious, when we feel that pressure, we begin to look around at everything, and everything that we have hope for, everything that we love, everything that we want the future to be, we feel when all this anxiety is around that it's under attack. And we feel we need to defend the truth at all costs. Right? And we're willing to do anything to defend that truth, no matter who we hurt. And you can see this anxiety building up and building up and building up, and we get to the first verse of Mark chapter 14, the beginning of our story. It says, and look at how it just continues the anxiety. It was 2 days before the Passover. Now that's a big thing, right? God does big things, especially when God's people believe that they are enslaved to Rome, that they view Rome as an occupying force. And when Judas Maccabeus took over, it was around Passover. And here Jesus is looking like the Messiah, and the disciples are like, all right, this guy's going to do it finally. He's going to deliver us all here. We can feel all this anxiety, and we're going to want to lift ourselves up, because they're like, Jesus is going to kick the baddies of Rome out, and he's going to sit on the throne, and the disciples are like, and we're going to be about 2 steps higher than everyone else, right? Look at me, right? The Passover unleavened bread is coming, and the chief priests and the scribes are seeking how to arrest him in a sneaky way, arrest and to kill him. It's all anxiety upon anxiety upon anxiety. You can just feel it all around. And then she walks in. She walks in, and I imagine on her knee breaks open a jar that's worth 50 grand, It's like someone walks in with this great piece of art. It's like, Jesus, this is for you. And this knife's right through the middle of it. It's like, easy, Banksy, we don't need you right now, right? That's what, it's like, what is going on? This $50,000 thing, she breaks open and begins to pour it on Jesus' head. That is ridiculous. And the disciples realize how ridiculous it is. They become indignant. They're like, we could have sold that for a year's wages. What are you doing? And they rebuked her, right? What are you doing? And this was what I saw this time that I haven't really thought of before. It was kind of dumb what she did. Why is she doing that? It's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. If you had a year's worth of your income, some of you are like, whew, go on some sweet cruises, That's, those river cruises in Europe are expensive. It's like, well, I could pay off a lot, I could not have to worry about bills for a year type of thing. All those things. It's ridiculous that what she does, and the disciples get indignant at her. Because when it looks like everything that we have hope and love for and the future is under attack, we often feel like we need to defend the truth at all costs. It was just like that pastor with my friend. And if I'm honest with myself, I've done the same things. I've done things really similar that I may have done it to some of you in the room. That in a pursuit of perfection and looking better, I've scolded people, I've talked bad about others, in order to make myself look better. and especially in the middle of anxious situations where it feels like I don't have time. And for all of that, I'm sorry. It's not my intention. But it's not in the church. We see this everywhere. Our relentless pursuit of being perfect, relentless pursuit of wanting everything to be so good that we end up affecting our relationships with general people. I mean, it's Thanksgiving. And you just got wind yesterday that Uncle Dale is coming with his new girlfriend, Sheila. And you're just like, oh no, he always is stirring it up, And he does it so innocently. Now some of you are like, I don't have an Uncle Dale coming to Thanksgiving. You're probably Uncle Dale. That's, if you don't recognize him, you may need to look in the mirror. You're stirring it up. You're like, and you're just like, I'm just telling my truth, Like that's, we look forward to family and all that, but there's a lot of stress that comes with that. When people start talking about conspiracy theories, when they start talking about, overly righteous things over here, when Sheila starts talking about the church that she joined, and you're just like, oh my gosh, right? Oh, I'm talking about my own life again? That's, we even do it with sports. We do it with everything. Because we do it because there's so much that is important, and it's all at stake, we feel. And we believe that we have to force people into this correct opinion to believe the right stuff. So we correct with brute force. And we slander each other. We talk bad about them, trying to find perfection ourselves, feel better about ourselves at their expense. We're really just tearing them down. And it's interesting what Jesus does with that woman. Because what that woman does is dumb. It's a lot of money. Why is she doing that? We need to be honest about what, it's like, oh, why is she doing that? And that lets you see what Jesus says in a completely different light. Because Jesus says, everyone tearing her down, Jesus says, leave her alone. Stop bothering her. Realize what she's done. She's done something that is actually quite beautiful. Leave her alone. And then Jesus puts all this good construction on it. Look what she's done. She's poured perfume on my body to prepare for my burial. Right? That's, he puts all this good, he sugarcoats the whole thing. And then he says one of my most favorite verses in the entire Bible. He says, because truly I tell you, wherever the gospel is preached, hey, that's today. Throughout the entire world, what she has done will be told in memory of her. It's because this absurd gift, this gift that shouldn't be done, she shouldn't have done it, it's absurd, it's out of couth, becomes an archetype for what we see that Jesus does. Where Jesus doesn't so much pour out perfume, but instead he pours out, amidst all the anxiety and the pains of the world, he pours out his life for us. Or just to move forward 14 verses, he says, this is the blood of my covenant, which is poured out for many. See it? It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And he does that for you. And just a few days later after this, we see that Jesus is crucified and buried. And why does he do that? It's because he speaks well of you. Not because you've been righteous, not because you believe the right things, not because you didn't believe those conspiracy theories, not because you didn't cause that division in your house, not because you didn't do all those things, but because you did all those things, Jesus poured out his life so that you might be good and righteous. It's dumb, and yet God did it for you. God did it for you so that God can see perfection in you. Jesus serves you, and that's where this perfection comes us. And it frees us. That then frees us to not have to destroy others in the pursuit of our own perfection, but rather we can rest in the victory of Jesus. I want to read for you guys the more of Luther's Large Catechism. It's 2 pages here. Just 2 slides, I'm sorry. Not 2 pages of things. Sit down, we're going to be here a while. But it's real good. You better not speak bad of me. We are to use the tongue only to speak the best we can about everyone, covering his sins and weaknesses by presenting them in the best light possible, and by veiling them behind his more honorable and attractive qualities. This is my marriage counseling 101. Is that what you do is you always, especially in public, make the person look better than they actually are. You know? That's what Jesus does for us. In the second page to all of this. The main reason for our doing this should be what Christ points out in the gospel passage, intended to embrace all the commandments concerning our neighbor. Oh, this is just a good ending commandment, right? Whatever you wish that men would do to you, do so to them. So, it's Thanksgiving. So rather than gossiping about or trying to correct Uncle Dale and his girlfriend Sheila, maybe you can bite your tongue this year, right? And you can love him and speak to his more good qualities, like compliment that boat that's been in his front yard for the last 3 years. No, maybe not do that. Maybe don't do that. That's not what I'm talking about. That's underhanded. Because Jesus died for him. And Jesus died for you. Jesus died for all of it. So in this holiday season, when that anxiety feels, that you feel, and it's cutting through like a knife, rather than tearing those down to feel better about ourselves, we can see that it is Jesus who came, poured out his life for us in this absurd way to make us and even Uncle Dale and his girlfriend Sheila look better than we actually are. And I think that's good news. And we'll end right there. Please rise for a prayer. Jesus, we thank you that you are with us. Lord, continue to bless and keep our Thanksgiving celebrations, our Christmas celebrations, our New Year celebrations, all the times that we rub elbows and shoulders and talk to all these people who have all these crazy beliefs. And Lord, give us faith in you that we do not have to correct, that we can enjoy each and other's company because you enjoy us. Thank you, Jesus. Amen. And we'll sing our next song together.